Hello, I'm Captain McCrickert, Lynchburg Fire Department. Today we're going to talk about the rotary saw. We're going to talk about the proper PPE, safe operation, the different blades, and also how to take care of the saw. All right, let's start off with proper PPE. We're going to obviously have helmet, eye pro, ear pro, and then you want to have on your full turnout gear. That being your bunker pants and also the coat. The reason for this is this saw here will throw out a lot of sparks, and it can also throw out some shrapnel, whether it be concrete or steel, depending on what you're cutting. So you want to make sure that you're covered head to toe with proper PPE, which again is your full turnout gear. Okay, let's talk about the parts of the saw. The switch here is the throttle or the trigger. This is obviously what gives the speed to the blade. You have the emergency stop that's right here. It's a momentary switch. You pull it out, the saw will stop and it automatically resets itself. Here is the choke, the blue one right here on the right. It has 3 positions, off, and then it has halfway, and then it has full choke. When you start the saw, you want to be in the full choke like it is here. And then after 2 or 3 pulls, when the saw burps, then you want to slide in halfway. After you do that, you can go ahead and start the saw. With the saw running, then obviously turn the choke, push it all the way in. All right, continuing on with the parts, obviously we have the pull cord here that we'll start the saw with. We have the wraparound handle so you can hold the saw in a couple different angles. And then obviously the blade is right here. We'll talk a little bit more about blades in a few minutes. All right, one of the last parts I want to talk about is the belt. The belt is inside of this enclosure here. There's a sprocket here that drives the belt, and the belt drives your blade. Unlike a chainsaw, you do not have bar oil. Instead, you have this belt. Right here is the belt tensioner. You can see this screw right here. This is the belt tensioner to keep the belt properly tensioned so the saw operates properly. If you do not know how to operate the tensioner, then have somebody qualified, a service technician, do it for you, because if not, you can get the belt too tight and burn the belt up. All right, in the LFD, you're going to basically find 3 blades that could be on these saws. First off is the Desert Diamond. That's on all the saws, at least one on each one of the 2 ladder trucks in the rescue right now. And then you have these other blades here. The blade, the Desert Diamond, is probably the best blade for multi-purpose use right now. But again, you have these other blades. We'll talk about the abrasive blade first. Most all apparatus are going to have these abrasive blades. These are very cheap. They're just about $6 or $7. They are made to cut different things. You can have a multi-purpose blade, you can have a metal blade, or you can have a masonry blade. The downside to these blades is they wear out quickly. And the other thing is, if they absorb gas fumes, they can deteriorate the bonding agent, the glue inside of here, and they can actually fly apart. Another blade that you may see is this Unifier Unicut blade. As you can see here, it has the diamonds on it. This blade here, as I mentioned earlier, have full PPE on. This is why this particular blade here will throw shrapnel, particularly if you're cutting steel. So you want to make sure definitely you have your proper PPE on with any blade, but this blade here will throw large shards of metal if you're cutting metal with it, and same thing with masonry. This blade is already on the saw is a Desert Diamond. You'll find that on at least one saw on each of our apparatus that has these saws on it. The apparatus that has these saws at the LFD is both the truck companies and the rescue. Unlike the chainsaws that you'll find on every engine company, these are only on those 3 apparatus. At least one of the saws on each one of those 3 apparatus will have this Desert Diamond blade on it. All right, one of the big differences between a rotary saw and a chainsaw is the blade does not stop when you let your finger off the throttle. It will continue to freewheel or spin until you bury it into something or some other way stop the blade from turning. You do not want to hand this saw off to your partner to finish a cut with the blade turning. That is obviously very dangerous. Another aspect that's different with this between a rotary saw and a chainsaw is the torque. We have 3 different size saws in the city. We have a 12-inch, we have a few 14-inch saws, and a couple 16-inch saws. The bigger saws, the 14 and the 16-inch, both have a lot of torque to them, so you have to make sure you have a good hold on the saw while you're operating it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about today about the rotary saws is the actual cutting process. If you're starting to cut with a rotary saw, you do not have to have the RPMs. In other words, the saw doesn't have to be wide open. You want about half throttle when you start your cut, and as you get your cut going, you want to increase the speed to full throttle and continue that speed while you're making your cut. It is possible to overwork the saw, and what I mean by that is, even at full throttle, if you're pulling the saw through your cut, you can pull it too fast and bog the saw down. You need to slow your speed that you're pulling through the cut down. Secondly is entering a cut that's already been made. Let's say you and your partner are working together on opening an overhead door. You make one of the cuts and then you allow your partner to make the second one. As I said before on safety, make sure the blade has stopped turning before you hand it to your partner. When your partner gets ready to go back in a cut that you started, you need to have the RPMs wide open, full throttle when you enter that cut so the saw does not bind up. All of these blades that I mentioned earlier will bind up very easy if the saw is not square to the cut or if it gets in a bind from starting a cut that somebody else has started and you're not at full throttle. If that happens, take your finger off the throttle, pull the saw out, and start over, as I said before, full throttle. There's only one way to properly start a rotary saw, and that's on the ground with your foot inside the handle housing where the trigger is at, and leaning over it with your body weight and pulling, and as I mentioned before about the choke being all the way out, and pulling on the cord till you hear the burp. But unlike the chainsaw where you can start it between your legs, the preferred method for a rotary saw is on the ground with your foot inside the handle casing. We'll wrap things up with talking about safety. Obviously, we always want to be safe, have the proper PPE. And the last thing that I would like to mention is you're only going to be as good with your equipment as how much time you put into training with it and practicing with it. If you don't pick up this saw but once a year, you're not going to be that good at it. So you need to practice with it as much as possible to become proficient with it and confident with it. Have respect for the saw and always exercise proper safety procedures.